Steelers Nation. Right now, the biggest thing everyone in Pittsburgh is trying to process is the situation surrounding TJ Watt. Because this isn't just another name on an injury report, and it isn't just about football. What we know, straight from what has been reported, is that TJ Watt suffered a partially collapsed lung during a dry needling treatment session at the Steelers training facility on Wednesday. That alone immediately changes the tone of the conversation. This required surgery, but the important part is that the procedure reportedly went well. It is considered minor in medical terms, and this is not viewed as a long-term, season-ending issue. That context matters because when you hear collapsed lung, your mind goes to worst-case scenarios. The good news here is that the issue has been fixed, and the expectation is that TJ Watt will be able to return later this season and finish the 2025 campaign. That said, all signs point to him missing Monday Night Football against the Miami Dolphins. Multiple insiders have indicated this is the likely outcome, and from a football perspective, that's obviously a massive absence. Even in a year where Watt's raw sack numbers may not jump off the stat sheet the way they have in the past, his impact has been undeniable. Opposing offenses are still treating him like the premier edge rusher he is. He's being double-teamed, triple-teamed, chipped, and schemed against as much as any defender in the league. That attention alone creates opportunities for everyone else along the defensive front. Cam Hayward benefits. Alex Highsmith benefits. Nick Herbig benefits. Even the interior defenders see cleaner looks because of the chaos Watt creates before the snap. Without him on the field, the concern isn't necessarily whether the Steelers can generate any pressure at all, because Highsmith and Herbig have both played at a very high level this season. There is confidence internally that those two can step up and give quality snaps as starters. The real concern shifts to the run defense. TJ Watt is one of the best run-defending edge players in the NFL, and losing that physical presence on the edge does matter, especially against a Miami offense that can stress you horizontally and vertically. Nick Herbig is a solid run defender, but going from Watt to Herbig is still a downgrade in that specific area, even if it isn't catastrophic. This is where the conversation naturally moves to Derek Harmon. His status for Monday looms large, maybe even larger than Watt's, in terms of how the Steelers match up against Miami. When Harmon has been out, this defense has been gashed on the ground, giving up over 200 rushing yards in back-to-back games. With a player like Devon Achane coming to town, having Harmon available to anchor the interior could be the difference between holding firm and getting overwhelmed. If Harmon plays, the Steelers' chances of stabilizing the run defense increase dramatically. If he doesn't, the challenge becomes much steeper. Looking ahead, the optimism is that Watt's absence will be short-term. There's a realistic possibility he returns as soon as next week against the Detroit Lions, though there's also a chance the team takes a cautious approach and holds him out for 2 games. And honestly, when you're dealing with something as serious as a lung injury, caution should be the priority. TJ Watt isn't just a superstar defender. He's a son, a husband, a father, and a brother. His long-term health matters more than any single game, and that perspective is important for fans to keep in mind, as frustrating as his absence might feel. But this situation also opens the door to a much bigger conversation about the direction of the Steelers' defense moving forward. With Terrell Austin in the final year of his contract and the defense underperforming expectations, particularly in postseason moments and overall consistency, there's growing speculation about whether a change could be coming at defensive coordinator. One name that stands out is Raheem Morris. If Morris is let go by the Atlanta Falcons at the end of the season, he would immediately become one of the most intriguing potential coordinator candidates on the market. The connection here is real. Morris and Mike Tomlin have a long-standing relationship dating back to their time under Tony Dungy and John Gruden in Tampa Bay. Tomlin has publicly praised Morris multiple times, spoken about their friendship, and endorsed him as a strong coach and defensive mind. With Tomlin widely expected to return next season and Cam Hayward potentially entering his final year, it's hard to imagine Tomlin walking away from this team right now. That makes the coordinator spot one of the few areas where meaningful change could realistically happen.
Morris brings something different to the table. He's not a yes-man coordinator. He's someone Tomlin views as an equal, someone with his own ideas and convictions. Before becoming head coach in Atlanta, Morris was considered one of the hottest defensive coordinator candidates in the league. His strengths lie in defensive play calling and game planning, even though he hasn't been calling plays during his time with the Falcons. In Los Angeles, his defenses ran modern concepts, including 2 high safety shells, quarters, and cover 6, and they consistently punched above their weight talent-wise. There's also instant locker room credibility. Jalen Ramsey has openly said Morris is the best coach he's ever had, and that carries weight in a league where players have worked with dozens of coaches. Pair that credibility with the existing defensive talent in Pittsburgh: Watt, Highsmith, Herbig, Hayward, Harmon, Keanu Benton, Peyton Wilson, Joey Porter Jr., and Ramsey, and you can see why the idea is gaining traction. Morris may not be the ideal head coach, but history shows some coaches are simply better coordinators, and there's nothing wrong with that. All of this is happening while the Steelers try to navigate the final stretch of the season, manage injuries, and evaluate what needs to change going forward. With Watt's situation, the run defense concerns, and potential shifts on the coaching staff, it feels like a pivotal moment for the franchise. The questions being asked now will shape not just the rest of this season, but what the Steelers look like in the years ahead. With all of that in mind, how do you feel about the way the Steelers are handling TJ Watt's injury and the possibility of a major change on the defensive side moving forward? Building off everything we've laid out so far, the ripple effects of these decisions go far beyond just one Monday night game. This stretch is quietly becoming an evaluation period for the Steelers, whether the organization wants to frame it that way publicly or not. When a cornerstone player like TJ Watt is forced out, even temporarily, it exposes truths about depth, scheme flexibility, and how much the defense relies on structure versus individual dominance. The next few weeks will tell the coaching staff a lot about who can truly be trusted when the margin for error disappears. From a schematic standpoint, Watt's absence forces the Steelers to be more honest with themselves. When he's on the field, you can win snaps by default because offenses overcommit to stopping him. Without that gravitational pull, execution has to be cleaner. Edge contain matters more. Gap discipline matters more. Communication on the back end matters more. There's less room for freelancing, and that's where some of the frustration with the current defensive approach has come from. Too often this season, the unit has looked reactive instead of dictating terms, especially against high-level competition. That's why the conversation about a potential future defensive coordinator isn't just off-season noise. It's directly connected to what we're seeing now. If the defense struggles again without Watt, especially against the run, it reinforces the idea that this unit hasn't evolved enough schematically. Talent alone can't be the answer every year. The league has adjusted, offenses are more efficient, and predictable defensive tendencies get punished quickly. Someone like Raheem Morris represents not just a new voice, but a philosophical shift toward adaptability and modern structure, while still maintaining physicality. There's also the human side of this locker room that can't be ignored. Cam Hayward is nearing the end of a Hall of Fame caliber career. Every season matters. Every playoff opportunity matters. For veterans like him, there's an understanding that windows don't stay open forever. That urgency trickles down. Younger players feel it. Coaches feel it. And when performances don't match expectations, accountability becomes unavoidable. If this defense underwhelms again in big moments, it becomes harder to justify running everything back unchanged. At the same time, the offense is quietly going through its own internal sorting process, and that ties into the broader picture of where this team is headed. Aaron Rodgers' comments about the passing game weren't accidental. They were revealing. When he talked about spacing, timing, and everyone being in the right spot, he was indirectly highlighting how thin the margin is at the NFL level. Veteran receivers like Adam Thielen and Marquez Valdes-Scantling may not light up the stat sheet, but their precision allows the entire offense to function more smoothly. That matters when you're trying to win now, not just develop talent for later. Roman Wilson's situation is a perfect example of how unforgiving this league can be. Talent gets you in the door, but trust keeps you on the field. If the quarterback doesn't trust you to be exactly where you're supposed to be at exactly the right time, the ball simply won't come your way. That's not personal, it's survival. With only a handful of games left, the Steelers have clearly chosen reliability over upside, and that tells you a lot about their mindset heading into the final stretch. All of these threads connect. Injuries force depth to be tested. Depth exposes scheme limitations. Scheme limitations bring coaching into focus. Coaching decisions affect player usage. Player usage defines results, and results ultimately decide who stays, who goes, and what direction the organization takes next. The Steelers are navigating all of that in real time, under pressure, with expectations that never disappear in Pittsburgh. What happens next will shape the narrative of this season. If the defense rallies without Watt, tightens up against the run, and finds ways to win, it strengthens the case that this group still has enough to compete at a high level. If it falters, the calls for change will only grow louder, and names like Raheem Morris will move from speculation to serious discussion. Either way, these games matter more than they appear on the surface. This is why the coming weeks are must-watch football for Steelers fans. Not just for wins and losses, but for answers. Answers about toughness, adaptability, leadership, and vision. So now I want to hear from you. Do you believe this defense can hold together without TJ Watt and prove it's more than just star power? Or do you think this stretch will ultimately confirm that real change is needed moving forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Leave a like if this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture. And keep your eyes on the screen for the next video because we're going to keep breaking all of this down as it unfolds. Zooming out even further, this moment feels like one of those quiet crossroads seasons that you only fully recognize years later. On the surface, it's about injuries, coordinator contracts, and lineup decisions. Underneath, it's about identity. For decades, the Steelers' defense has been defined by intimidation, consistency, and an ability to impose its will regardless of opponent. The league has changed, offenses have evolved, and the question now is whether Pittsburgh is evolving fast enough or leaning too heavily on reputation and individual brilliance to carry them through. TJ Watt's situation crystallizes that tension perfectly. When he's healthy, he can cover up flaws. He can turn a broken play into a sack, a stalled drive into a punt, a close game into a momentum swing. Without him, the margin shrinks and systems get exposed. That's not a criticism of Watt, it's a reflection of how valuable he is. But it also forces an uncomfortable reality. Truly elite defenses don't collapse when one star is missing. They adjust. They redistribute responsibility. They lean on structure as much as talent. That's why these next games matter so much internally. Coaches are watching to see who communicates when things go wrong, who fills gaps instinctively, who can diagnose plays instead of reacting late. Players are watching to see whether the scheme puts them in positions to succeed or leaves them guessing. Front office decision makers are watching to see whether underperformance is a talent issue, a health issue, or a coaching issue. All of that evaluation happens quietly, but it's relentless. The same lens applies on offense. The shift toward veterans who do the little things right is not accidental. It's a signal that the Steelers believe they still have a chance to make noise, but only if the operation runs cleanly. Timing, spacing, and precision aren't luxuries in this league, they're necessities. When Aaron Rodgers talks about everyone being in the right place, he's describing trust. And trust is everything in high-pressure moments. Without it, playbooks shrink and options disappear. That reality can be harsh for younger players trying to find their footing. Development takes time, but winning now demands certainty. The Steelers are clearly prioritizing the present, and that choice will have consequences in the offseason. Some players will benefit from it. Others may find themselves on the outside looking in, not because they lack talent, but because the window didn't align. All of this feeds into the broader question Steelers fans keep asking. What version of this team is being built? Is it a group trying to squeeze one more deep run out of its veteran core, or is it a team straddling the line between competing and resetting? The answer probably isn't clean or simple. It's likely somewhere in between, and that's often the hardest place to live in the NFL. What's undeniable is that the next stretch of games will accelerate decisions that might otherwise take years. Injuries speed up timelines. Disappointment sharpens focus. Opportunity reveals truth. By the time this season ends, the Steelers will know far more about themselves than they did when it began, and so will the fan base. That's what makes this moment so compelling. It's not just about Monday night, or even this season. It's about direction. It's about whether the Steelers are still shaping the future, or reacting to it. And that's why every snap from here on out carries weight far beyond the scoreboard. And this is where the pressure truly shifts from abstract discussion to unavoidable reality. At some point, philosophy has to turn into results. You can talk about culture, standards, and legacy all you want, but the NFL has a way of cutting through words very quickly. If the Steelers want to prove that this era is still about competing at the highest level and not just maintaining respectability, it has to show up in how they respond right now, when things are uncomfortable and imperfect. What happens without TJ Watt on the field is not just a test of depth, it's a test of leadership. Who sets the tone in practice? Who raises their voice when communication breaks down? Who takes ownership when assignments are missed and gaps open up? Those answers don't always show up on a stat sheet, but they matter deeply inside the building. Coaches notice, teammates notice, and over time, those dynamics shape the direction of a franchise. It also forces clarity. Ambiguity can linger when stars are healthy and results are mixed. Injuries strip that away. Either the system works, or it doesn't. Either players execute, or they don't. Either coaching adjustments solve problems, or the same issues repeat themselves. There's nowhere to hide. And for an organization that prides itself on stability, moments like this often determine whether continuity is a strength or a liability. For the fan base, this is the point where emotions tend to split. Some see resilience and believe this team will rally, tighten up, and find a way to win games the hard way, just as Steelers teams always have. Others see warning signs, patterns that feel too familiar, and wonder if stubbornness is preventing meaningful progress. Both perspectives come from caring, and both are rooted in watching this team closely over many years. That's why these conversations matter. Not because they create panic, but because they demand honesty. The Steelers don't need to blow everything up to evolve, but evolution does require willingness to change. Whether that means new voices on the coaching staff, new schematic priorities, or a clearer separation between development years and win-now years, those decisions are coming. The season itself will force them. As the games unfold, every snap becomes part of that evaluation. How the defense adjusts without its cornerstone. How the offense balances precision with explosiveness. How the coaching staff responds when plan A isn't available. By the time the final whistle of the season blows, the direction forward will be much clearer, whether fans like the answers or not. Now it's your turn. How do you see this moment for the Steelers right now? And what do you think it says about where this team is headed? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you want daily Steelers coverage like this. Drop a like if this breakdown helped you see the bigger picture. And keep watching because the next video is coming up on your screen. And even after all of that, there's still another layer to this conversation that can't be ignored, because the Steelers are not operating in a vacuum. The AFC is ruthless right now. There are no soft stretches, no weeks where you can sleepwalk and expect to come out clean. Every flaw gets stressed, every weakness gets isolated, and teams that hesitate get past. That context matters when evaluating everything we've talked about, from TJ Watt's injury to coaching philosophy to personnel decisions. The margin between being dangerous and being forgettable in this conference is razor thin. 1 or 2 games swing perception entirely. One injury accelerates a reckoning, and one missed opportunity can close a window faster than anyone expects. That's why the Steelers' response in this stretch isn't just about surviving until what returns. It's about showing they can adapt on the fly, that they can win games in different ways, and that they aren't locked into a single identity that only works under perfect conditions. There's also a message being sent internally to the locker room, whether intentional or not. When veterans are leaned on, when reliability is prioritized, when roles become more rigid late in the season, it tells players exactly where they stand. Some respond by elevating their play. Others fade into the background. That natural separation is part of every NFL season, but it becomes more pronounced when expectations are high and patience is low. For younger players, this is either a proving ground or a pause point. Opportunities don't always come when you feel ready. They come when the team needs answers. How players handle those moments often defines their future with an organization. For veterans, it's about legacy and urgency. You don't get infinite chances, and everyone in that locker room knows it. All of this circles back to the same core truth. The Steelers are being forced to show who they really are, not who they want to be. Not who they were 5 or 10 years ago, and not who they might become in theory. Who they are right now, under pressure, with less margin, and with real decisions looming. That's why this stretch matters so much more than standings alone will ever show. So as this season continues to unfold,